In Genoa City, the kind of danger that truly destroys lives never arrives with noise. It arrives with precision, with patience, and with the quiet certainty that by the time anyone notices, it is already too late. Nick's disappearance did not erupt into chaos at first. It slipped into the edges of the day, into unanswered calls, into a silence that felt wrong but not yet catastrophic. For most, it was easy to believe this was another reckless move, another moment where Nick had pushed too far and stepped into trouble of his own making. But for Sharon, that explanation never settled. It felt incomplete, like a story missing its most important truth, and the more she tried to accept it, the more her instincts refused to let her rest. There was something unnatural about the way Nick vanished, something too clean, too carefully contained. His last known movements formed a pattern that should have led somewhere clear, but instead ended abruptly, as if the truth itself had been cut away. Sharon began to retrace those steps, not out of curiosity, but out of a growing dread that someone had deliberately rewritten the narrative. Each detail she uncovered only deepened that dread. A location that disappeared from the system seconds too early. A call log that ended without resolution. And then, the most damning absence of all, a missing piece of surveillance footage that should have captured everything. That missing footage became the center of everything, the void that defined the truth more than any visible evidence ever could. And at the center of that void stood Adam, whether he intended to or not. Adam had always believed he could move through crisis without being consumed by it. He had built his identity around control, around the ability to anticipate outcomes and manipulate them before they could spiral. But this time, his control had created a silence that was far more dangerous than any mistake. The footage he erased was not an impulsive act. It was deliberate, calculated, and rooted in a decision he had made long before Nick ever stepped into danger. Months earlier, Adam had faced a threat that could have dismantled the Newman Empire from within. It was not a direct attack, not something Victor could crush with power or influence. It was something quieter, something that required negotiation, compromise, and a willingness to cross lines that Adam had once sworn he would never approach. He made a deal, one that was never meant to surface, one that he convinced himself was temporary, necessary, even noble in its intent. In his mind, he was protecting the family. In reality, he was building the foundation for a collapse he could not yet see. Matt Clark saw that foundation long before anyone else did. He did not rush to destroy it. He studied it, understood its weaknesses, and waited for the exact moment when it could be used to inflict the greatest damage. Matt understood something that Adam had underestimated, that loyalty within the Newman family was both their greatest strength and their most exploitable weakness. Adam had tied himself to a secret that could not survive exposure. And Matt realized that the easiest way to break Adam was not to confront him directly, but to force him to choose between truth and survival. Nick became the focal point of that strategy, not because he was weak, but because he was predictable in the most dangerous way. He would never step back from a threat against his family. He would never hesitate to act, even if he did not fully understand what he was walking into. Matt built his trap around that certainty, presenting a situation that appeared to be an opportunity to end the threat once and for all. Nick stepped into it without hesitation, driven by instinct, by anger, by the need to protect everything he believed still mattered. And in that moment, the trap closed. When Nick disappeared, the damage began to spread inward. Victor felt it immediately, though he did not yet know its source. His reaction was not panic, but tightening control, a silent escalation of power that placed pressure on everyone around him. Nikki experienced it differently. For her, it was not just fear for her son, but a deeper, more painful realization that something within their family had shifted long before this moment. The unity she had fought to preserve was beginning to fracture under the weight of secrets she could no longer ignore. Sharon's search brought her closer to Adam, and with each step, the truth became harder to deny. Adam's behavior had changed in subtle ways that only someone who knew him deeply could recognize. He was not deflecting. He was not lashing out. Instead, he was holding something back, containing a truth that he believed he could still manage. But that restraint only confirmed Sharon's suspicion. When she uncovered the evidence of the deleted footage, the reality of what Adam had done became undeniable. He had not acted out of malice toward Nick. He had acted out of fear, out of a desperate need to keep his past decision buried. And in doing so, he had allowed that decision to spiral beyond his control. Victor confronted Adam with a force that was not just authority, but something closer to betrayal. This was not an enemy attacking from the outside. This was his own son standing in the center of a crisis, holding a secret that could determine whether the family survived or shattered. Adam faced him with a silence that carried more weight than any confession. He knew what the truth would do. He knew it would not just expose him, but unravel everything the Newman name stood for. Meanwhile, Nick's situation grew more dire. He was not simply missing. He was being erased in a way that ensured no clean resolution would ever exist. The trap had been designed to remove him from the equation without leaving behind a clear path to justice. By the time Victor's resources began to uncover the truth, the damage had already been done. Nick had been pushed beyond the point of simple rescue. His survival was no longer guaranteed. When Nick was finally found, the moment was not one of victory, but of reckoning. His condition spoke of violence, of manipulation, of a fight he had never truly had a chance to win. Seeing him like that stripped away every illusion the family had clung to. Nikki's composure broke in a way that was quiet but devastating. She saw not just her son lying on the edge of life, but the culmination of years of choices that had led them all here. The ambition, the secrecy, the relentless need to control outcomes had finally turned inward, consuming the very people it was meant to protect. Adam stood in that moment, facing the full weight of what he had done. The choice in front of him was no longer about strategy. It was about consequence. To tell the truth meant exposing the agreement, revealing the vulnerability that had allowed Matt to strike, and admitting that his attempt to protect the family had nearly destroyed it. To remain silent meant preserving the illusion of strength, while ensuring that the real threat remained hidden, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. The conflict inside him was not simple guilt. It was something deeper, something rooted in a lifetime of fighting for a place within a family that had never fully trusted him. He had believed that protecting them, even through deception, would prove his loyalty. Instead, it had isolated him further, turning him into the very thing he had always tried to overcome. Nikki saw that truth with painful clarity. Her anger was not directed at a single act, but at the pattern that had defined their lives. Her sons were not just victims of an external enemy. They were victims of a system of secrecy and control that had shaped them from the beginning. The realization that she could not protect them from that system broke something inside her that could not easily be repaired. As the truth hovered on the edge of being revealed, the Newman family stood at a point of no return. Every path forward carried destruction with it. Confession would shatter trust. Silence would guarantee further damage. The anger, the betrayal, the fear, and the desperation had all converged into a moment where no decision could restore what had already been lost. And in that fragile, irreversible space, the real question was no longer how to save the family, but whether there was anything left within it strong enough to survive the truth when it finally came into the light.